Welcome to Bill and Amon's Bogus Hangout. We're at the pre-holiday edition today, joined by Terry Van Horn. Terry, why don't you say hello and tell us what you're up to?
Well, Bill introduced me. I'm with SEO Dojo and SEO Pros. Lately, been working on building a couple of communities. One for a business, one that'll probably be part of SEO Pros when I relaunch it, trying to figure out what to do there.
SEO Pro sounds interesting. Haven't talked too much about that recently. How's that going?
It's starting to come together. I'm basically looking at the old content, updating it. Like there's content there from when the site was originally done in 2003. And I'm kind of rethinking what I'm going to do there.
So that was 15 years ago.
Yeah. Things have changed a little since then. Like there's a lot of talk of submission and that sort of thing. Because, yeah, a lot of old techniques that aren't really in vogue. And actually, you could see where there's a lot more specialization in SEO now. And kind of saw that from the beginning because my advice has always been don't hire one, hire SEOs to do specialized jobs. Don't give it all to one firm. I don't care who you are. Nobody does it all good. There always, if you go to someone who specializes in links, you're going to probably do better with them than if you get a company that doesn't do that much of that. Like say a technical SEO company. Like I do some link building, but if people really need links, I tell them go elsewhere because I have no interest in doing that because it's not in my skill set, really. Never had to do that much. Like when we first started, when you need to rank for something, you didn't have to get links. You just had to build more content for those keywords. And the links come if you build good content. That's the way I've always believed it, but that doesn't work like it used to. Now you have to go out and shake the trees.
Well, the really earliest days of SEO, links were all that really mattered, I think.
Yeah, but you could get them at directories and stuff. So once you did that, you had your page rank going to your, you had your equity in your home page. Then you could distribute that out and rank for almost anything new you added.
I was thinking about the days before PageRank, before Google, when you try to get traffic, and that was the purpose behind links.
Yes. But now, it's, to me, it all seems a little, well, to me, they say build a natural link profile. Well, if you're begging for links, you're not building a natural link profile because a natural link profile, you don't need to ask people to link to you. You don't need to seek opportunity. Because basically, Google doesn't want anyone doing outreach, even though it was around before Google was around, because they think that actually skews the way they're doing things, right? If someone gives a link to someone for any reason other than that being the best content, that actually goes against Google's idea of how things should work.
Google has always pressed the phrase editorially given links. People link to you because they like your content, because they want to provide access to it and share it with other people.
Right.
I have no problem with that.
Right. But that kind of says we don't want you going out and telling people about your stuff. They should discover it on their own.
Hey guys.
Isn't that basically what the Reasonable Surfer says?
The Reasonable Surfer describes how Google will treat links it finds on pages, but it doesn't talk about the activity of finding links for your page.
Oh, okay.
It says, okay, as opposed to the random surfer model, where we built something that follows an individual around as they click on links randomly on sites and go from page to page to page. We think there's a little bit more thought going on behind the choice of links people find on page. It's a reasonable surfer because the links that people are most likely to click on are the ones that they likely will. So if you see something like terms of service in anchor text on a page, most of the time people don't click on that. They don't really bother. They don't care.
Right.
It's not their first priority. So
right.
They don't pass much page rank to terms of service pages.
Yeah.
Somebody actually came up with something they called the intelligent surfer model. I'm not sure if the web was ready for that.
Yeah, I think that might have been premature.
Yeah.
About 3 generations.
That isn't taking users into account at all. I think that's just giving them a little bit too much credit.
Yeah, the benefit of the doubt is one thing, but that might be a dream there.
So we used to, back in the days pre-Google, when we were thinking about putting links on pages, we used to think about things like how much we trusted the people we were sending our visitors to. Would they treat the people well?
Right. Also, in my experience, right, most of the links I gave out were only ones that I thought were useful to me, so they would be useful to other people, and therefore my site became pretty popular as a result of being a good reference for that kind of material.
I was working on incorporation in Delaware business, and we had links to places like tax attorneys and CPAs. And we would think, are these really people we want to send our visitors to? Is this a CPA who we have some faith in? Is this a tax attorney who we would trust with our clients? I'm not sure. I suspect people think about that stuff these days when they link, but I still do to some degree.
I think a site that has, if it's a blog or whatever, or maybe it's a business, if they have a following and they're concerned about their reputation with their following, you'd certainly think that, yeah, they'd be more cautious about who they would, because that's basically, it's a tacit recommendation. You say, here's a link to somebody that does something. It's almost endorsing it. So, I would certainly be cautious about linking out to any jackleg who is offering services or the best price without knowing anything about them. I can put my own reputation at risk. I don't need help.
There's a legal blogger named Andrew Sullivan who at one point was cited as having more subscribers to his blog than the New York Times had to their site.
Wow.
So the day after that came out, he posted a link in his blog to a New York Times article and put in parentheses afterwards, I hear they need the traffic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's a good idea to think about things like that when you're linking to somebody.
Oh, sure. I have even seen instances where a client had a link out to another site, and somebody went to the other site and ordered a product and never got it, or they got it and it was a piece of crap, and they came back and commented, "Hey, you might want to stop recommending those guys because they never filled my order, or they sent me a piece of garbage." So I think users think about that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Hell, that's nothing. We've got a Google review from someone who stole our ad. Just use the address. And the people are saying, where are these? How would we know? And Google wouldn't remove the review.
Huh.
I mean, to me, it just seems, kind of obvious.
I've gotten comments from people after I've linked to tech bloggers when they've gone to the tech blog and looked at some of the old stuff and clicked on some of the links to their old content, and all the links were broken.
Mm.
They really got upset, those blogs.
And I get emails, maybe 2 or 3 a quarter from some user that's gone to one of my sites and says, don't know if you're aware or not, but your link to such and such on this page is broken.
Yeah.
Which is a little different issue, but still, definitely, I think you need to be cautious about who you link to. At least from the standpoint of users, probably not as much for Google, but from a user standpoint and clients and prospects, certainly, I think, you're attaching your name to a degree to that link.
Yeah, I use a broken link checker plugin because it finds them. I check on my links and replace all the broken ones, and the ones that redirect, I change those around so they don't go through redirects anymore. Mm-hmm. And I figure it's good to maintain that stuff.
Agreed.
It's easier to find it that way, Bill.
What's that?
If you maintain the links properly, it's easier for the users to find the content.
Yeah.
So never mind the search engines.
I mean, I like the thought that people may be linking to some of the older content that I have. I think a lot of it's still evergreen. It really hasn't changed that much. Some of it has. But I tend to write about patents, and the patents haven't changed.
Well, I noticed that you have done a write-up on a patent, let's say a couple of years ago, and then all of a sudden you see an addendum to it. You'll go back to your old content and edit it to show that on such and such date a change was, and maybe you do a new write-up. You can link to that. But I noticed that a couple of your old articles, you've gone in and said, okay, this was updated on such and such a date, and dropped a link in there. And I think that helps too. I still think QDF is a factor. But again, just putting our attention to the users, it just makes it more useful to them. And I think it does something for your credibility too, and to show that you're staying on top of things, or that you're always looking for new information.
When you update that page, Google knows it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they take that into account. If you update that page, to them it's like it's fresh again.
And of course, then you've got the idiots out there that just go and change the publish date on an old post and think that that's going to work some magic.
Well, probably does for a week or two.
Hey, yeah, for a couple days, yeah. But
I tend to want to give my clients sustainable results, not something that I can say, hey, that worked for a week or two.
yeah,
Generally, are not too pleased with that.
yeah, finding an old misspelling or a grammatical error and changing that on the old post is not an update make.
But I often now go back and link new pages from old ones that used to rank, because I find that helps the newer content too.
Mm-hmm.
Because that old content that's still ranking, it when you change that to link to another page, that brings that up in its radar, and it's a link from a page that's ranking. So that relationship is huge. To me, that's how you maintain rankings over a long period, is keep interlinking all your posts where you can.
And you're connecting the ideas, you're connecting the concepts, the stories. Yeah.
It's a good way to update stuff too, or put a slightly different slant on it. Because I mean, we've got a blog that's been open, that's been writing. At one point, it was 3 to 4 times a week for like 14 years.
Yeah.
So, it's office space. You're going to run out of topics. Or you end up writing about the barbecue, and I just don't, I don't want to really talk about the barbecue unless it's a community event, but, and a networking event. But, yeah. Or talking about Veterans Day, that kind of stuff, or, to me, that doesn't belong on that blog. That's a personal blog type thing.
Well, that's like, I think we were discussing here a couple of weeks ago in the dojo that when you've got a page, let's say for 4th of July or Thanksgiving celebration or whatever, if there's a perennial event, like, Casey's Armageddon, okay, it's Christmas Armageddon. He builds a page. He doesn't go build a new one for 1999, a new one for 2000, a new one for 2001. He builds an event page, and then he updates it every year. And I don't understand why anybody would have ever thought it was a good idea to build a whole new page, start from scratch trying to rank a whole new event page when you've got some equity already built up. But apparently a lot of people are doing it.
The smart way to do it is you have the landing page be the current one, and then you make
backlink to the old one.
Yeah, you make an archive of the past ones.
But you're not starting from scratch every time. You've got that landing page. It's got its equity, and it's keeping it and building it.
Building equity every year. Otherwise, and people don't really. A lot of times when I see people who say, "Oh, I need more links," they need to link more intelligently. Like, you look at their internal linking, and they fragmented it across 4 different tags. So they have a tag for the same thing, basically, but different ones covering the same topic. Well, shit. I mean, don't have to be too smart to figure out that if you have one.
Hey, you're the one that brought intelligently into the conversation, Terry. Your credibility was shot right there.
That just shows that. But I didn't have to be told that, right? No one had to explain that to me. That seemed like common sense.
Well, which ain't all that common, unfortunately.
Well, because people, I believe, don't think through. they've had everything handed to them. They've never had to think it through,
Yep.
you know, and figure this out for
Yep.
So there's this dependency. I don't know. Sometimes
and that issue seems to be getting worse every year rather than better.
well, yeah, because it becomes easier and easier. Right? When I came in, it was easier to manipulate search engines, and there was a lot less competition.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And Google wasn't telling you shit. You had to figure it out for yourself or forget it, you know. And now they tell you all kinds of things. Some of them are so vague and then you've got all the idiots that are misinterpreting and broadcasting to the world garbage, or they tell you something that's just flat out inaccurate. Like our buddy John the other day made a comment on an entirely different question that people immediately jumped on a bandwagon. That if don't worry about negative SEO, it can't affect you. Just ignore it. And that's not at all what he was saying, because the question didn't have to do with negative SEO per se. It had to do with CPC pirating or click-through rate sabotage. And that was his answer. Don't worry about it. Just ignore it. And I think that's a valid answer to that question. But everybody said, no, you know, he was saying, don't worry about negative SEO. And everybody jumped on that bandwagon. You know, everybody tends to.
or how about when he said links aren't important?
Yeah.
You know, that's like kicking most of them right in the groin. I mean, like, that's what their whole business, everything they do is based upon the premise opposite of that. However, to some degree, I do agree with John that links are not as important as they were in 2013.
Absolutely, they've diminished in importance. Yeah,
there's so many factors now. You know, which means all that means is you don't need as many links to rank as you did before. And I question whether numbers was ever a thing. To me, it's all about quality.
It's quality, not quantity. Yeah.
I can show you sites that were PR4 that had like 4 or 5 links. That's it. But all the links to them were PR4 or 5.
Yeah. Well, we're as a industry, we're really good at attaching the meaning we want to see to their words rather than the meaning that really applies. I think that, you know, yeah, I agree. I think links have definitely diminished in importance. They're not gone. Now, a lot of people will say they'll never go away. Well, I don't know if I entirely buy that. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, and I don't know that they'll ever really go away 100%. But as you know, we've talked about before, you know, when if you've got 200 factors and you suddenly add 30 more factors, then each factor is going to have less value in the pot to draw upon. Each other factor is going to have a diminished contribution to ranking.
And you can say about a lot of optimization techniques on page, they aren't very important by themselves. It's the all of them together that makes the difference.
Well, right? Sure.
None of them just, pardon me?
An SEO campaign is successful by being a project where you manage a lot of different factors.
Mm-hmm.
Where you improve lots of things, where you not only address things like page speed, how quickly a page loads, but how easy the page is to use, how relevant the page is for the topics that you're talking about, how likely it is that people will come back once they've read your page or refer people to your page. Yeah.
Right. All of those are factors too.
And And of course, as AI continues to develop, that combination of factors is going to become even more important than it was.
Yeah.
You got a machine that can think 1,000 times faster than a human mind. You know, you got to assume there's going to be some acceleration, and it's exponential. You know, so when the things that you do, even just looking at content quality, there's a dozen or more things that contribute to the value of a piece of content, and AI is going to be able to slowly but surely going to be able to evaluate that content more effectively.
It's only going to be as good as people who program it.
Well, sure, but the learning ability, for learning algorithms, may overcome some of the shortfalls in initial programming. May, in quotes.
In other words, if you feed it enough crap, it may figure it out.
Exactly.
It may start doing programming itself, and
well, they've already done it. They actually. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there was an article about this AI program that developed a whole new language to talk with other algorithms, and they haven't been able to break it. They haven't been able to interpret the language yet.
And the AlphaGo program developed by DeepMind was beaten in Go by another program that taught itself Go, that was programmed by an AI to play Go.
Wow.
So
Wow.
It was bested by something that wasn't programmed by humans.
Interesting future we may be looking at.
I think it's always going to change. It's always changed. And
Sure.
people have always said we're going to be out of a job in 10 years. Look, I've been doing this 25 years, and my job is more secure now than it was when I started.
Yep.
I think there are more professions, other professions at risk, like lawyers and judges.
Yeah. Well, I look at the assembly lines in Detroit. That was an early indicator of what robots could do to employment, and it's just exponentially greater when you start talking about algorithms that can actually outthink humans. Accounting, for instance. Why would you pay a human who might make an error in preparing your taxes, when I would imagine that right now somebody could develop a very effective accounting program to find the most beneficial tax breaks, the most beneficial depreciation schedule for your taxes, and do it for you. And you buy the program one time.
Yeah,
you don't pay this guy $5,000 every year. You buy it one time and you use it.
QuickBooks will do that. For a small business, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's an awful lot of jobs that, they're at risk for computer programs. But I don't think my landscaper needs to worry. My electrician has probably got a future. Well, and as far as I'm concerned, like you, Terry, I think I've got a future too. At least as long as I plan on still being around. Maybe 70 years from now, like Trump says, when that happens, I won't be here, so it ain't my problem.
Not someone else's. But I could see robots doing landscaping because it's mostly manual labor. So I think you could do that.
Well, to a degree, cutting the lawn, sure, but designing your garden and whatnot, maybe someday. Who knows?
But the actual work a robot could do it.
I was watching a bunch of videos last night just for idle entertainment, and I saw some on some really mind-blowing pieces of equipment that are in common use in the public works departments in China for things like replacing manholes, a whole new manhole. You're taking a job that used to be 4 guys for 3 days. And they got a machine now, takes them 15 minutes to set it up, takes the machine 7 minutes to do the work, and then takes them 5 minutes to clean up. So they used to take 4 days to do one. Now they're doing 11 in a day. 2 guys. Only 2 guys, just because it takes 2 guys to lift this machine off the trailer.
Well, and you got public works got to have 2 guys supervising.
Well, yeah, but I mean, not in China, you know. But the thing is that, you know, there are so many functions that can be automated, and you know, this is not fully automated. Some guy still has to pick the spot and lay the mounting plate down and tell the machine where to put it. And that's basically, aside from cleanup, that's where the human involvement ends. Do it here, I'll sweep up afterwards. So now instead of 4 guys doing one in 4 days or 3 days, now they got 2 guys doing 11 in 1 day. It's interesting, you know. I mean, you know, you and I've been around long enough, Terry. We've seen stuff in our life that is already, we might have scoffed at the possibility when we were kids. I don't know. You remember the original Buck Rogers TV program?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, from the 50s and 60s. Okay. My dad was laughed out of school because he said, I'm gonna live to see this stuff. You know, and now we got that stuff and a lot of the stuff that's on Star Trek that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So, and it's developing faster every year. You know, the acceleration is there. So, you know, if I live another 20, 30 years, Lord knows what I'll see. There may be weekend tourist flights to Mars for all I know.
Robot dogs.
I won't go, but
Why get on a plane? Just go out the reality, virtual reality. You can go wherever you want.
well, you know, I got years ago, Barry Adams and I were talking about some science stuff. You know, he's really into high tech science, and he got me interested in one topic that I ended up doing a lot of reading on that was fascinating, and that's teleportation. And they're already able to do it to a degree. You know, they started out by teleporting a photon, and now they've been able to get a photon to go faster than the speed of light. Marginally, you know, I mean, like 2% faster, but still, speed of light was supposedly terminal velocity, and now they've managed to get them to go faster than the speed of light. They were able to transport an electron 17 kilometers from one lab to another. And they were able to teleport an apple. Now, granted, when it got where it was going, it wasn't recognizable as either apple or applesauce. It was just totally discombobulated, you know. But they actually made it disappear here and made some crap appear there. Now, that's mind-blowing. Some of the stuff that's going on at CERN in Switzerland is amazing. But yeah, it's fun watching the stuff develop, and it's interesting because it really gets your imagination flowing. Where could it go? You remember on Star Trek, the universal translator? They just plug this little earpiece in their ear, and they could talk with any alien in any language and understand them and be understood. We've got it. It exists. You and I together couldn't afford it, much less to have 2 of them, so because you both have to have it, but it's now available for languages that have been programmed into this system in the cloud. And it's fast enough that they're saying that the lag in translation is under a second.
Doesn't the Google earplugs do that?
I don't know if the Google earplug does or not. I don't know nothing about it. I know Skype came out with something a couple of years ago, and I have no idea how good it ended up being, but they were supposedly going to be able to do voice chats, multilingual voice chats, where you and a guy in France could each speak your respective languages, and it would translate to text into your language on the screen.
They brag about how good that is, but I've seen English conversations where autocorrect is properly referred to as auto-incorrect.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I have full confidence.
Yeah, there's always the risk of telling somebody, "Hey, I like your shirt," and you've insulted them and you get popped in the mouth. Now, see, when they start programming the computers with a sense of humor, just imagine these algos could have a lot of fun with us because we're basically easy.
I don't think we'd see it coming. Yeah, I've been trying to read more about artificial intelligence.
It's there's a lot of information out there, and frankly, a lot of it, when you start getting into the deep stuff, it's over my head, a lot of it. But there's an awful lot of information out there, and there's an awful lot of progress that has been made towards it. Okay, what the ultimate will be, who knows? If it's ever really going to be able to replace a human mind in terms of imagination and sense of humor and irony and that sort of thing. That's getting pretty iffy. But they can already outthink us from a logic standpoint.
If what they're doing could be called thought.
Well,
some debate on that.
Yeah. Well, depends on how you look at it. Are we trying to say that a machine can have the same thought processes as a human, or are we just unwilling to admit that the human's thought processes are basically just an organic machine?
Are we trying to say that a machine can learn, that it can develop its own personality, that it can become self-aware?
Sentient.
I don't have any problem believing that the answer would be yes, eventually. I can't think of any logical argument against it being possible. But then again, I'm gauging that against the so-called intelligence of the human race in general, which is not setting the bar very fucking high.
I think at some point they're going to realize you can only take that stuff so far, that it's useful to a certain point, but at some point it becomes counterproductive.
Well, and there are those that say at some point it could become very dangerous, and that's that Rod Serling effect, But I think that just last week, some worker in China was attacked by a robot in the machine because apparently the machine had the ability to detect things like a fallen item off of a bin that was on the floor. It would detect it and report it to another robot that would come and sweep up, gather up these fallen pieces of merchandise. So that one robot saw him there. He was down on his knees doing something, and the robot saw him, reported him, and the other robot came along and swept him up. And apparently, it hit him. It ran into him, and it has these gathering arms in front of it. It ran into him and tried to gather him up, and he was resisting. So it backed up and got a run at it, broke his leg. Another guy got 10 5/8-inch spikes driven through him when a robot fell on him.
Uh-huh.
We're not. We haven't mastered the basics of OSHA yet, so I don't know that we're really ready for machines that might mistake us for a hazard.
Well, they're only intelligent as the person who.
What science fiction movie was that where the punchline was something like "to serve humanity"?
That was, oh God. Yeah, it was supposed to. It was a cookbook. Yeah.
Right.
What was that? Oh Lord, I just went blank.
Green? No,
No, it wasn't Soylent Green.
no, it wasn't.
It was a big one though. It still is. It's a real cult movie. I don't know. I have this friend called Google. I'll tell you in a minute. To Serve Man. It was a Twilight Zone episode written by Damon Knight.
It sounds like him. Yeah, I've read some books by him.
Yeah, it was a science fiction short story by him, and then they built an episode around it in Twilight Zone.
I think we'll be venturing into the science fiction area when it comes to AI at some point.
I think it's probable. I suspect that we'll probably develop the technology faster than we think it through.
We'll develop technology that can do more developing of its own, which is where I think it becomes scary.
Mm-hmm. Well, you remember who was it that wrote the story that had the original? They featured it. They didn't write it, but they featured the original 3 laws of robotics.
Isaac Asimov.
Was it Isaac? Okay. Yeah, and remember all the debate, still ongoing debate about how valid those are and if they're adequate or was 2 enough. And if we can't agree on stuff like that, we're going to have issues.
And Google has patented something very similar to those. I'm sure the guys who wrote the patent were laughing their brains out, but it does say something very similar. And the company that Google acquired 3 or 4 years ago, DeepMind,
Yeah.
one of the stipulations for the acquisition was that Google start a committee to monitor the growth of AI. Sort of a compliance type thing to check up on them and make sure it was being done safely.
Yeah, it's become a buzzword too. AI has become a buzzword.
Yeah.
Basically, people are saying anything that basically mines a big database is AI. You know.
Well, there's a vast difference between machine learning and AI, and a lot of people seem to equate them as the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, we wandered a little bit on topic, didn't we?
A little bit.
There are no topics here, are there?
I'm going to ignore the fact that that happened right after I showed up. I'm sure that's pure coincidence.
Well, we think about what we're working with. We're working with information technology. We're working with companies that have developed AI applications and specialized chips to use to run AI programs like TensorFlow. It's not a surprise we would talk about that type of thing. I mean, how effective does something like deep learning do what it does? Machine learning. That people working for AI who've written books about how machine learning mimics how the brain works with things like neural nets.
Which is an interesting thing to say, given the fact that the medical community will still readily admit that we have no friggin' idea how the human mind works.
Or why.
Some of it may be more philosophy than actual biology. But
Yeah.
we think we understand how a mind recognizes patterns and builds upon them, but those are guesses.
It's conjecture, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, look at, how long has Einstein's theory of relativity stood all the tests of science? And now it's being thrown totally out the window because of the being able to exceed the speed of light. Because once you remove that as a constant, the whole thing means nothing. And even quantum, which we don't fully understand yet, is based upon his theory of relativity. So that goes out the window too.
And he said about quantum mechanics that it was wrong because God does not play dice. That was his phrase, yeah.
Well, if he does, they're loaded.
But that's also the advancement of technology. Right? Couldn't measure faster than speed of light before, could you?
Well, yeah, you could, but very roughly. I mean, you could detect that something was faster than the speed of light, but you really couldn't quantify it.
Right.
Yeah, you couldn't say how much faster, and I don't know that that's even not still to a degree true. I mean, they moved this photon, something like 17 kilometers, and it arrived a few milliseconds or maybe microseconds faster than it should have at the speed of light.
Wasn't that due to a glitch in the measuring apparatus?
Apparently, it was repeated many times with different apparatus, and also different spectrum photons, different light spectrums. So, and it was apparently consistent, but it throws so many theories off.
Right. Physics becomes kind of
iffy, yeah.
Question mark if that's true, right?
Exactly. Well, plus the fact, I remember when I was in elementary school, the smallest particle known was the neutron, which is slightly smaller than a proton and considerably smaller than an electron, and they make up an atom. Now we've gone 4 levels deeper, and we've already detected 2 more levels. We just haven't been able to isolate them yet, and so you're going all the way down into muons and stuff. And how many more levels are there? Who knows?
It's pretty tiny.
Huh?
It's pretty tiny.
Yeah. And then you start talking about stuff like dark energy that has mass, and it comprises the vast majority of the universe is comprised of dark energy, and we have not clue one about what it is, what it does, where it comes from, where it's going, but it makes up most of our universe. Oh, well, we'll worry about that later.
Yeah, not going to be one of my problems.
Yeah, I probably won't be around kicking around then either, but
No, it goes way outside the scope of SEO. To get Bill Nye the Science Guy as a guest here. So, Doc, you were late today because
a couple of nieces from down south flew in about midnight, and they're over at my sister-in-law's place, which is a couple blocks behind us. And I saw them because my daughter went with her aunt to go pick them up at the airport. So when they dropped her off, I saw them last night, but my wife had not seen them, and she was itching to go see them. So we went over there to have breakfast and see the nieces. And then their mom is coming in tomorrow, and the three of them will be staying over through Christmas.
Oh, nice. I was thinking I need to head on your way sometime soon.
Do it.
See what that looks like.
Hey, bring it, man. We'll always find space for you at the table. Share some tacos and a beer. Or some beers and a taco. Depending which way you lean.
Christmas tacos. Yeah.
Hey, tacos are universal down here, man.
Mm-hmm.
Although the traditional specialty down here, you can find them all year long, but around Christmas, tamales are a must-have.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We used to order 6 or 8 dozen tamales in, around Christmas time, and 2 days in, we'd be out,
I think I've ever had tamales.
Oh, they're great. I mean, you can, it's like a taco. You can basically fill them with anything. There's a lot, there's chicken, there's sweet tamales that have got fruit, pineapple and apple or whatnot like that in. There's pork and beef, and thank God I've never heard of a fish tamale, although I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's done it. I never heard of a fish taco before I moved to Baja either. But, which surprisingly grows on you. But the idea really turned me off when I first heard of it.
Well, as far as I can tell, fish tacos weren't originally from San Diego. They were from Tijuana.
Most likely.
Mm-hmm. People selling fish tacos here, places like Rubio's, first had them in Tijuana. And brought them to this area.
Well, there's some good ones here right in our neighborhood, really local. Beer battered fish fillet with, basically kind of like coleslaw, and they're good. But man, the first time I heard of that, I thought, what the hell? Whose brain fart was that? Putting fish in a taco. But they're pretty good. But anyway, yeah, tamales. You got the sweet ones, and you got the hot ones, and then it'll just be chilies and queso, and the whole thing with a tamale, it's the masa, which is the batter around it, more than the filling.
Really?
And that's the tricky part. And I actually went out and bought a big steamer, because it's like a double boiler where the inner one is perforated, and you build the tamales, you wrap them in corn husks and put them in there, and then you boil the water, and the steam is what cooks them. And I bought one of these things a few years ago for my wife to make tamales, and it is as yet unused. And she swears up and down it'll still be unused the day she goes in the ground. So it's a lot of work. I mean, first of all, the masa has to be done by hand. You don't do it in a machine. It's got to be kneaded by hand, and it's got to be cold, which takes a lot of the fun out of it. I mean, this stuff is like almost semi-frozen when you can work it. And she decided no, she will not be making tamales. So now we're both trying to gang up on my daughter and bully her into it. And she hasn't taken a hard stance against it yet, but I haven't seen her get in a line to try it either. So for the meantime, I just find somebody local and order up a dozen or so. And maybe something else I don't see before I die. But yeah, you come on down, man. Pick a time. It's not like I go anywhere. I'm always here. In fact, I've been kind of. You remember when I had almost had a conference ready to go off down here?
Yeah.
In concert with the Mexican government, who dropped the ball horribly. But I've been thinking about just doing something like a meetup, a lot less formal, just a one-day meetup, and you and Casey, maybe Tim, you know. There's a bunch of folks here in San Diego that might be interested in coming down. It could be fun to get a chance to meet some folks and maybe do a couple talks.
It'd be fun. I'd do that. Yeah. I'd like to see Tijuana too.
You've never been here?
Never. Yeah.
It's different, but it's a whole lot better. You know, 20 years ago, it was awful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this terrible, terrible poverty, and it wasn't clean, and it was dangerous to be on the street. Even behind a wheel, it was dangerous. And it's gotten a whole lot more civilized, but it's still different. It's not like San Diego. The downside to it is, ever since 9/11, is the traffic at the border, because CBP has had to really tighten up. And just like this morning, my daughter left, and in an hour and a half, she was across the border because she was working on the other side today. And the day before, or 2 days ago, she had to go, and it took her 4.5 hours to get across.
Oh.
Because people are out on Christmas vacation this week and shopping and whatnot. There's an awful lot of people crossing the border. It took her 4.5 hours. And if you hit the border, even holidays notwithstanding, if you hit the border at rush hour, you can easily spend 2 or 3 hours. If you time it right, sometimes you'll almost drive right up to the Garita and you're across in 5 minutes. And on the day and the time and whatnot. So that's important, because there's a lot of people live on the north side and work down here, in the Maquiladoras, and there's a lot of people that live down here and work up there. But yeah, man, look at your calendar, pick a day, and come on down.
Okay.
I'll send you a map, and it's easy to find.
Yeah. You'll send me a map?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I could just send you a link to a Google map and mark it on there where we are. It's easy. It's easy to find coming across. They've sped things up going through the border coming south a lot. Yeah. They revamped the entry where it used to be kind of a maze of, you got to be in the left-hand turn lane here and the right-hand turn lane there, and don't blink, you'll miss it. Now you got to go 17 miles out of your way. And now it's pretty straightforward. You got the big arrows. They got the signs in Spanish and English, so it's pretty easy. They finally figured out that making the fast lane hit an off-ramp didn't work well with illiterate drivers. Of which there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we've got an extra 4,500 Honduras refugees clogging up the streets now. Of course, the good news is that the streets are much safer now that Trump has had all the kids locked up in cages. You know, we don't have those little urchins out there threatening our life and limb.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, guys. Call this a show. Thank you both. Take care. Thank you.
Always fun.
Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.